Greetings, modernism and the museum students. I hope this finds you well. This is week 3 of our 8-week journey through exploring the modernity of the art museum and exploring also the important role that art museum scholarship, museum exhibitions, and the experience of works of art on view in a museum context affect and shape and contribute to art historical research, and how you should think about it as graduate students pursuing a master's degree in modern art history, theory, and criticism. So how has the museum historically shaped our understanding, our historical understanding of modern art, and how has it shaped our experience of modern art and its relationship to other works of art? This week is the first of a 2-part exploration of the relationship between art museum scholarship and art historical scholarship, academic art historical scholarship. And they are closely interrelated. They contribute to each other. There are art historians who are working as museum curators and working from museum exhibitions. There are museum curators who are, most of them are trained as art historians with doctorates in art history, and they toggle back and forth between their careers as museum curators and as art historians. My own professional career has toggled back and forth, in which I've worked as a museum curator and then also having taught in the classroom. And one of the ways for us to explore this relationship and to explore the important role that the museum has had on modern art, on the development of modern art, is the role that the art museum and museum exhibitions have had in how we understand modern art and how historical research on modern art occurs. And so the kinds of readings that I've presented to you during this with this first part are explorations of the basic features that each exploration of the work of art, each iteration of the work of art is able to bring out. And my argument for you is that despite the disagreements, the critiques, etc., that both are necessary, that the museum exhibition is necessary for art historical research, for academic art historical research, and that academic art history is necessary to produce well thought out and important museum exhibitions. But with these comments, I want to emphasize some of the contrasts and some of the ways for us to think about what these two ways of knowing and understanding art consist of. So for academic art history, what is meant by academic art history is art history that takes place in seminar rooms and classrooms. It is art history that is produced through archival research. It is art historical research that doesn't necessarily have as its final focal point, an understanding of particular works of art. Art historical research will focus on the social, cultural, economic, and other material manifestations and processes that artistic practice responds to, participates in, is shaped by, and affects. It focuses on the interpretation in some way, historical interpretation of the work of art. And its audience is a limited audience. Its audience is the audience of specialists. It's the growth of scholarly knowledge amongst scholars in a particular disciplinary field. That is academic art history. Out of that, there are survey textbooks, and out of that are more broadly based studies that address students of modern art history, but not necessarily experts and scholars. So the field, say, of modern art history, poses questions and raises problems that other scholars attempt to answer. Those problems and questions are largely of little relevance to broader publics and even general students of art, or those that are interested in learning more about modern art. The audience for museum scholarship, for museum exhibitions that work and extend the knowledge of art, the audiences are much more diverse. They operate at different levels. Those exhibitions are for specialists, they're for students of art, and they're also for a broad public, an interested public, a tourist public, a general public that's interested in cultural matters. And so interested in art in general, or curiosity of art in general. And so then the exhibitions themselves are presented in a much more diverse public forum, which means they interact and connect with, bump up against a number of different viewing publics that can engage not just cultural issues and artistic issues, but also political issues. The object of the art museum is the artifact, the painting, the sculpture, the film, the photograph, the particular artifact. And so ultimately what begins the work of a museum exhibition is to put artifacts in relationship to other artifacts, to put paintings in relationship to other paintings. And what is written about, what is presented on the wall labels and the brochures, and then in the exhibition catalogs, which often serve as the bridge between academic art history and museum scholarship. The focal point is the particular works of art. Moreover, academic art history is focusing on particular historical problems circumscribed by a particular historical context. The museum, however, is free, much more free. It is diachronic in a sense that it can put a painting by Jackson Pollock and an ancient painting, wall painting from the Pompeian murals of the 1st century AD together. That what unifies the experience, what unifies the exhibition, isn't going to be a circumscribed historical context, say New York painting from the mid-1940s to the late 1950s, which was the historical context that framed my doctoral dissertation topic. For the art museum, particularly the museum exhibition that occurs in an encyclopedic museum, it can open up a whole host of issues that are not narrowly prescribed as historical or historiographical in writing histories, producing histories, but experiential, which are putting works of art from diverse contexts, from different chronological points in the history of Western or non-Western art, world art, global art, together. And so the unifier then is the person that experiences the work. So these relationships that occur are relationships that are not necessarily limited to historical questions. They begin and end with the experience of the work. Oftentimes with the formal qualities of the work, because the formal qualities is what is most evident. The research behind it, the archives behind it, the history behind it are the hidden components, of which that work of art is the visible manifestation. And so what the museum exhibition does, the museum exhibition as scholarship, is can contribute to the growth of knowledge, scholarly knowledge, even historical knowledge, by placing the objects together. So that by seeing them and experiencing them and finding different juxtapositions, that you are opening up new ways of knowing and new ways of learning about the meaning and significance of that work of art. Moreover, it opens up the various levels of experience. And so a scholar or a specialist will experience that exhibition in a way that the general public will not. And so the museum exhibition produces or engages with numerous different, as I've mentioned, viewing publics. And yet what that museum exhibition is also needs to be, I would suggest to you, is it needs to be aware of that scholarly work and how it can also then contribute to the historical, scholarly, archival production of the work of art. In large part also, the art museum is because it is a steward of the objects, it's also a steward of the research around the objects, the history of the object, the life that the object has lived in various collections. And that research is something that art historians will use as primary material, archival research for their projects. But the focal element is that the criticism that academic art history has on museum exhibitions is that museum exhibitions are not scholarly enough. They focus too much attention on formal issues. They will cater to general public tastes. And confirm presumptions about what art is and what culture is rather than looking for new knowledge. And then the criticism of the academic art of academic art history is because it operates in such a narrow guild of circumscribed questions that are only of interest to a handful or a limited number of scholars, that its work doesn't get known and disseminated into the broader educated public. That if somehow the advanced scholarly research on the development of Impressionism could break through the limited number of scholars into the broader public, maybe the broader public's mind and understanding and imagination would be changed about why Impressionism is important, and its radicality and its inherent political gestures and all of those aspects that the general public ignores when they go see Monet's Haystacks or Renoir's Nudes. And again, what I want to try to do is to separate these two endeavors and then also to bring them back together. There's an aesthetic dimension, experiential dimension, a diachronic dimension in the museum exhibition that is extremely important for the growth of scholarship. And there's also, in the art historical scholarly guild, there is advanced research, there is in-depth historical work that is being done that can and should shape the broader public in terms of the significance of artworks that are oftentimes the blockbuster exhibitions and the more fashionable or broadly cultural interest in the visual arts. So I hope these thoughts are helpful to you. Have a great week. Again, I've given you a lot of readings. You do not have to do all the readings, but these are files that you can begin to develop. Research files that you have that you can consult at a later date, later in our class or later in your career. Also, I'll be assigning a midterm reflection, which will give you an opportunity to assess what so far has been of most interest to you and perhaps articulate a question or articulate a subject that you might want to spend more time on in your final paper. So I'll explain more about that in the content of the email. Have a great week, And I'm looking forward to working with you over these next 2 weeks, especially with this interaction and crossover between art history and the art museum, of which I am particularly passionate about and a participant. Have a great week.